Most people will die in their own homes, not because they lacked food or water or weapons, because they waited too long to leave. There's a psychological trap buried so deep in human instinct that even trained emergency responders fall into it. It's called normalcy bias, and it is, without question, the single deadliest force in any collapse, disaster, or grid-down scenario. Your brain, the same one that learned to walk, solve problems, and love people, will construct an elaborate internal argument for why things are probably fine, why leaving feels extreme, why waiting one more day is the smart, measured, rational move. And while your brain builds that argument, brick by careful brick, the window to survive quietly closes. Here's the thing the preparedness community doesn't talk about enough. Bugging in, staying home, sheltering in place is not always the safe choice. In the right scenario, it's the most dangerous thing you can do. The entire castle doctrine of survivalism, this idea that your home is your fortress, your cache, your best defensive position, it's partially true and dangerously incomplete. Because a fortress means nothing when the threat isn't trying to breach your front door. Sometimes the threat is invisible. Sometimes it's social. Sometimes it's the infrastructure your fortress quietly depends on dying around you, while you sit inside convinced you're being smart. There are three specific, observable, measurable signs that your house has crossed the line from shelter to trap. One you can smell, one you can see coming from your own street, and one that's already hiding inside your walls, right now. When any one of them appears, the smart money says you move. Not tomorrow, not after one more news cycle. Now. Let's start with the first, because it's the one most people see, misread, and pay for with their lives. Your municipal water has either stopped flowing or you've been told not to drink it. That's it. And most of us, myself included before really digging into this, don't fully grasp what losing municipal water actually means until it's already too late to matter. Water isn't just about drinking. In a home environment, water is sanitation, and sanitation is everything. The average person produces roughly 128 grams of fecal matter per day. In normal conditions, you flush it away, it disappears, nobody thinks about it. The moment municipal water pressure drops below the threshold needed to move waste through your pipes, you are now living next to an accumulating biological hazard. Your toilet isn't a toilet anymore. It's a holding container for E. coli, salmonella, hepatitis A. And when that container becomes unusable, those pathogens don't stay politely inside it. They spread to surfaces, to hands, to food. And here's what makes it worse. You can't see the contamination spreading. You can't smell the specific bacteria. You just slowly stop feeling well. And by the time you connect the dots, you've been dosing yourself for days. Here's what that actually looks like by day 5 in a real home with 4 people and no functioning sewage. The smell hits you before you're fully awake. It's seeping through the floor, through the pipes, through the walls. The bathroom door stays shut because opening it is a decision you have to mentally prepare for. You've been using a bucket and sealing the bags, but the bags are running low, and the smell has started reaching the kitchen. Your kid has been complaining about a stomachache since yesterday. You tell yourself it's stress. You've been under a lot of pressure. Kids pick up on tension. It isn't stress. This is exactly how cholera devastated populations during historical sieges. Not because people were ignorant, but because confined spaces with compromised sanitation create contamination cascades faster than anyone expects. The 1854 Broad Street outbreak in London killed over 600 people in 3 weeks, most of them with no idea the water was the problem until symptoms had already started. The mechanism hasn't changed. The biology doesn't care what century you're in. If you're in a suburban or urban environment, you almost certainly have no septic field. You are fully dependent on municipal sewage infrastructure. When that system fails, pump station down, pressure lost, deliberate shutoff, your home becomes medically uninhabitable within days. Not uncomfortable, not inconvenient, medically uninhabitable in a way no prep list can solve, because you cannot filter your way out of a sewage problem that's already inside your walls. A Berkey filter is extraordinary technology. It does not filter your bathroom floor. The people who understand this and move early take their stored water, their filtration gear, and their food cache to a pre-planned location. The people who don't appear in disaster aftermath reports 3 weeks later. Preventable illness, dehydration compounding an otherwise survivable infection, children admitted to whatever passes for medical care in a grid-down environment. They didn't fail because they were unprepared. They failed because they stayed inside a biological timeline they didn't know was already running. When the water is really gone, the clock has started, and it's measured in days. But even if you've solved water, even if you have a rain barrel, a Berkey, a full septic setup, there's a quieter threat that specifically targets the best prepared people, the ones who did everything right, the ones who spent years and real money building their cache. Your neighbors know what you have. Before this reads as your neighbors will turn on you, that's not the argument. Most neighbors are decent people. Most of them would help you in a normal emergency without a second thought. The argument is more uncomfortable than that. Acute scarcity doesn't just change circumstances, it changes cognition. And it does so in people who are, by every normal measure, good. Princeton researchers Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir documented this in their work on the psychology of scarcity. When people face genuine resource shortage, not discomfort, actual shortage, cognitive bandwidth narrows radically around the thing they lack. Long-term planning degrades. Impulse regulation weakens. The brain enters a mode that prioritizes immediate resource acquisition above almost everything else. You are not dealing with your neighbor in a resource-scarce environment. You are dealing with a different operating mode wearing your neighbor's face, running on 4 days of hunger, and a child who won't stop crying. Now consider what that neighbor has seen over the past year. The heavy boxes from the outdoor supply store, the garden you planted, the smell of food cooking when nobody else had power. Maybe you were generous early on, a human impulse, a decent one. But that generosity confirmed something. There's a supply here worth knowing about. In disaster literature, this is called the beacon effect, and it is one of the most underappreciated threats to stationary survival in populated environments. You didn't advertise, you just lived your life. But in a grid-down environment, living your life visibly was the advertisement. The hard reality that serious survival instructors and former military personnel consistently emphasize, a fixed, known, resource-rich position becomes a targeting variable when rule of law degrades. Your home's defensibility isn't primarily a function of your firearms. It's a function of whether people know you're there and what you have. And if you've lived in the same house for years, that information is already out. You can't unring that bell by adding a deadbolt. Think about what holding that position actually looks like on the ground. It isn't a dramatic raid scenario where you defend a barricade and the threat retreats. It's the slow, grinding pressure of multiple people across multiple nights. Someone rattling the back fence, a group pausing too long outside your window, your dog going silent at 3 in the morning in a way that makes your stomach drop. Each incident is individually survivable. Collectively, they destroy sleep, erode judgment, and hollow out morale faster than almost any physical hardship. A siege is decided by attrition. If your supplies and your people are finite and the pressure is continuous, time is not working for you. And unlike the other side, you have everything to lose. Leaving resets the information environment entirely. A campsite in a state forest doesn't have 5 years of behavioral data attached to it. A rural property 2 counties over isn't broadcasting its supply chain to a neighborhood that's hungry and scared. You disappear from the threat model, and that is a defensive advantage no amount of barricading your front door can replicate. Tactically, invisibility beats fortification almost every time. Now, the third sign, the one that was already there before the crisis started, built into your house, hiding behind the monthly utility bill. And depending on the season, it can move from serious to fatal within 48 hours. Your home's passive thermal stability is almost certainly worse than you think. Modern homes aren't designed for passive survival. They're engineered for active climate control. Every calculation about insulation, window placement, and building materials assumes a heating or cooling system is running. Remove that system, and your house doesn't hold temperature the way a stone cottage does. It equalizes with the outside faster than you expect, faster in wind, faster in direct sun. Picture a family in suburban Michigan. January. Grid has been down for 36 hours. The furnace is dead. It needs electricity for the igniter and blower. The propane heater they bought 2 years ago is in the garage, but they only tested it once and they're nervous about indoor ventilation, so they're being cautious. The kids aren't sleeping bags on the living room floor, which worked last night. By the second night, the indoor temperature has dropped to 48 degrees. The grandmother who came to stay because her apartment lost heat too stopped complaining about the cold around dinner time. She seems calm. She isn't calm. Her body is already redirecting blood from her extremities to protect her core. She doesn't feel cold anymore because early-stage hypothermia dulls the sensation. By the time someone notices she's confused and slurring slightly, they're already in a crisis with no infrastructure to address it. The National Weather Service is explicit on this. Hypothermia doesn't require extreme cold. Core temperature dropping below 95 degrees Fahrenheit is enough, and that threshold can be crossed in indoor temperatures in the low 50s when the person is elderly, sedentary, or has been wet at any point. The demographic most at risk in your home, the elderly, infants, anyone with cardiovascular conditions, is also the demographic least able to communicate that something is wrong before it becomes irreversible. Now run the same scenario in the other direction. Phoenix, Arizona, August. The grid goes down at noon on a day the forecast says 112 degrees. By 2 in the afternoon, the house is a different place. A modern home in direct southwestern sun with no airflow doesn't stay at ambient outdoor temperature. It exceeds it. Dark roof, minimal cross-ventilation, heat-retaining stucco and concrete, the interior climbs to 115, then 118 degrees by mid-afternoon. The grandfather sitting in the living room has stopped sweating. That sounds like a small thing. It isn't. When the body stops sweating in extreme heat, it has lost its primary cooling mechanism. Core temperature starts rising unchecked. He tells his daughter he feels a bit dizzy, maybe he'll lie down. She brings him water. 20 minutes later, he's on the floor, his skin dry and hot to the touch, breathing fast and shallow. He never woke up. This is heat stroke, not heat exhaustion, not discomfort. It is a systemic organ failure cascade that kills within hours of symptom onset. When untreated, after the 2021 Pacific Northwest heat dome, medical examiners in Oregon and Washington documented hundreds of heat-related deaths. The majority occurred in residential buildings. Most were people who stayed inside because inside felt safer. In that specific combination of conditions, a shaded outdoor area with any cross breeze was measurably, demonstrably safer than the interior of a closed modern home. The building that was supposed to protect them became the mechanism of their collapse. The survival logic is identical in both directions. If your home cannot maintain a safe thermal environment through passive means without the electricity and gas and infrastructure you're quietly assuming is coming back, then in those conditions, for those vulnerable people, your home is not shelter. It is an exposure environment with familiar furniture. And the cost of staying is being paid by the people in your household who cannot pay it. So how do you draw the line? How do you know the difference between this is hard but manageable and we leave today? You decide before the emergency starts. Pre-committed trigger criteria aren't a paranoid prepper exercise. They're the single most effective tool against the pressure that will make leaving feel wrong at exactly the moment leaving is right. Your calm, clear-headed pre-crisis self follows them, because that version of you will negotiate every single one if you give them the chance. For water, if municipal supply stops or a boil water advisory is issued with no confirmed restoration timeline within 48 hours, you leave. Not on day 3 when the smell has started, day 1 before the cascade begins. For security, If you observe organized groups moving through your neighborhood after dark, active threats towards your property, active looting within 2 blocks, or a visible absence of any law enforcement presence for more than 24 hours, you leave. Not when someone approaches your door, before that. For thermal, if your home cannot maintain a core living area above 55 degrees Fahrenheit in winter or below 95 in summer through available means, with conditions forecasted to persist beyond 48 hours, you leave. Not when someone is symptomatic, before that. Consider 2 families. Same neighborhood, same event. Family A leaves on day 2 when the water advisory comes through with no timeline attached. They have somewhere to go, a relative's property 40 minutes out with a well and a wood stove, and enough land to stay quiet. The next 3 weeks are uncomfortable, boring, occasionally frightening. They argue about food distribution, they sleep badly, the kids are impossible. They come home. Family B stays. They have good preps, real commitment, a solid cachet, arguably better supplied than Family A. By day 9, the sanitation situation is becoming a genuine health concern. The neighborhood dynamic has shifted in ways that make sleep difficult. The teenage son hasn't slept a full night in 4 days because he's listening for sounds outside. The grandmother has developed a respiratory infection that would be trivial with functioning medical care and is not trivial without it. Nobody in that house is making good decisions anymore because nobody in that house has slept or felt safe in over a week. They're not losing because they were unprepared. They're losing because they stayed past the point where staying made sense, and now every option is more expensive than it would have been on day 2. The mythology around bugging in carries real emotional weight. I will defend my home connects to identity, to investment, to the deep human impulse that the place you've built is worth protecting. None of that is wrong. But military doctrine on defensive operations is clear. You defend a position when its strategic value exceeds the cost of holding it. When the position has been compromised by supply failure, by information exposure, by physical conditions working against your most vulnerable people, you conduct a tactical withdrawal and reestablish somewhere the math works in your favor. That is not retreat. That is strategy. Your home is one possible execution environment for your survival plan. It is not the plan itself. The plan is keeping the people you're responsible for alive, long enough for conditions to stabilize. The geography of where that happens is a variable. It is not sacred. 3 signs. 1 you can smell from the bathroom on day 5. 1 you can see moving down your street at 2 in the morning, and 1 that's been hiding in the walls of your house the entire time, waiting for the power to go out in the wrong season. You can decide what those signs mean right now, calmly, clearly, with full information and no pressure. Or you can wait and let the emergency decide for you.